It is Usyk Fury 2 coming up this weekend. A gigantic fight to close out an excellent year of 2024 in the world of boxing. So, what is on the line for Oleksandr Usyk coming up this weekend as he defends the unified but not undisputed heavyweight championship of the world? First of all, just a quick note. That is so stupid. I hate it so much that he won the undisputed heavyweight championship when he beat Tyson Fury. Has not lost since. Hasn't even taken that long off. May to December is perfectly reasonable amount of time to take off when you're getting punched in the brain. And in that time, he has inexplicably lost one of his heavyweight championships. Goddamn boxing. But either way, the recognized heavyweight championship of the world is on the line this weekend. And so, first of all, when we ask, hey, what's on the line? That, just the moniker of being the number one heavyweight in all the land is on the line, and everything that comes with it. Now, it is not with the prestige that it once was. Out here in Calgary, I host trivia, and one of my questions this week was, hey, who's the heavyweight boxing champion of the world? Because a lot of times, everyone in the world knew who that was. And I think out of the, what was it? I think I had 15 tables this week at the three things that I did. Oh, more than that, I guess. I had around 20 at the three things that I did, and I think 2 tables got it right. So heavyweight champion doesn't mean what it once did. But still, in the boxing world, the heavyweight title still carries so much meaning, and Usyk has a chance to continue to carry that coming out of this one. He has been a fantastic champion, and it is an amazing career. 22-0 with some very big wins coming along the way. And so, from a legacy standpoint, I don't think he loses anything with a loss, but remaining champion in what looks like is going to be a pretty wild time in boxing, with Saudi Arabia not going away. Maybe the UFC is getting involved. We will see. But either way, it seems like it's a pretty good time to be the heavyweight champion of the world. And Oleksandr Usyk will look to hold on to that mantle coming up here this weekend. From a legacy standpoint, he obviously has already done a lot. And it's an interesting spot because he has had an amazing career and he has done a lot. And I don't think a win here changes a ton of it, but I also don't view him as one of the all-time guys, right? That being said, a win here, and now he has 2 wins over the 2 of the defining heavyweights of this era. And I think that's pretty monumental, right? He would have the 2 wins against Fury if he wins, and he would have the 2 against Anthony Joshua. That already in the books there. And so I think a win here does solidify him as one of the best ever to go from cruiserweight to heavyweight, getting in that Evander Holyfield conversation. Already there, but this might move him to the tippity top of that. I really don't think we're talking about best ever status if he comes out. Now, if he walks out and just blasts Tyson Fury into the first row in the second round, then, maybe we can revisit some stuff. But I don't think you're talking about, like I said, greatest ever status. But I do think you have to start talking about the heavyweight of this era. And I just, when I look at the post-Klitschko era, I view it as, in heavyweight, Fury, Joshua, Wilder. Those are the guys that I kind of focus on. Because Usyk came to the party a little bit late, or a lot late, I guess, in this case, it doesn't feel like he is in that realm necessarily. It just kind of feels like a different era, which is weird because he is older than those guys also. But it just kind of feels like he comes up at the end and is kind of taking it into a new era with him, and Dubois and those guys, right? But if he does win this again, it's 2 wins against Fury, 2 wins against Joshua. He doesn't have any against Wilder, but he'll have 2 against the guy who beat Wilder. So maybe it just does put him in heavyweight of the generation era, or whatever you want to call it. What it certainly does is add to an amazing resume. And so for a sport that has this long lineage at heavyweight, it is obviously going to be very difficult to crack any top 10 or top 5 or Mount Rushmore or whatever you want in terms of a resume, especially now, given the greats that have come before. But that doesn't take away from the amazingness that is Oleksandr Usyk and the talent that he has brought into this heavyweight division. From a fight standpoint now, what does he need to do? I think the first thing, kind of obvious, a bit of a quicker start is going to be key. He is definitely going to have the cardio edge in this fight, but he cut it way too close in the last one, needing that big knockdown in the ninth to edge out a split decision. I think he has the speed edge. I know he has the speed edge, and he has the cardio edge. We know those things will be there. I think you need to utilize that a little bit earlier in this fight and kind of dictate how you want it to go, and that will be, I think, an advantage he will have over the previous fight. I think the thing that will help with that is he's obviously going to have a bit of a better sense of Fury's range, having danced that dance for 36 minutes just a few months ago. So he is going to be very comfortable in that world. I don't know how much Fury is going to adjust going into this fight. I don't know what adjustments you can make if you are Tyson Fury. I think you will understand that the head games aren't going to work against this guy, and I think you will kind of understand that the early part is going to be a very, very important part of this for Fury, and very much a make hay while the sun shines sort of a thing, because this is Usyk's fight the longer it goes. I do think that Usyk being the favorite makes a ton of sense, and I do think it is a deserving favorite nod as we go into this fight. I think it is going to be another very close fight, but ultimately, again, I think the tools in the toolbox for Usyk just help him out a little bit more going into this one against Fury. But, and everyone knows it, he knows he is going to have to be perfect for all 12 rounds if he wants to come away as the heavyweight champion of the world. We are going to have a ton more on this fight. I am so excited for Saturday afternoon to catch this bout. I think it is going to be a blast to watch it this weekend. So we got a ton more coming up on this fight as the week rolls along. It is a fantastic rematch coming up this weekend in Saudi Arabia as Oleksandr Usyk defends his heavyweight championship against Tyson Fury in an epic rematch from the bout that these two had, unifying the heavyweight championship belts back in May. Once again, this is not for the undisputed heavyweight championship because the IBF sucks and took the belt away from Usyk. But still, a bunch of them are on the line when these two step into the ring. As mentioned yesterday, we talked about Usyk. Today, we are looking at what is on the line for the former heavyweight champion of the world and the current challenger, Tyson Fury, in this rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. Fury, legacy-wise first, he has obviously established himself as the heavyweight of this generation, right? He beats Klitschko, he beats Wilder twice. That's like, he kind of wins this era. And we talked a bit about it yesterday. Usyk just feels like a late addition to this, so it feels almost like a different era, right? Because Wilder is done. Joshua, he did get to fight him, and he did beat him twice. So I guess like he is still fighting these two guys in this generation, but it still does feel like this is just not necessarily the same era. He wasn't in it the whole way as Fury was. He was just off being awesome at cruiserweight. But to really cap off this run here for Tyson Fury, it sure would be a big feather in the cap to knock off the present day pound for pound great that is Oleksandr Usyk. I don't think a loss changes too much of the feel of his career, right? Like we already had the go last time when he loses to Usyk. And so I think that the loss in the last fight probably does more damage to the reputation than a loss in this one would. It would just be a heavyweight at the end of his career, ended up losing to a very talented fighter who happens to be older, but still, this is just how these things go sometimes. And so I don't think the overall perception of the career of Tyson Fury would be all that different if he were to lose this fight. A win, though, and I do think it does help out a little bit more of the all-time status. I don't think he's ever going to get into that real pantheon of the all-time great heavyweight boxers, right? But I do think that he is able to kind of get back on track at getting close there if you can just pass off the Usyk loss as, yeah, you know what? Really good fighter. Maybe I took him lightly. I've come back now and I've beat him in this fight. So now I am the champ one more time. And I have avenged that loss and not taken it off the record necessarily, but being able to avenge that and just have that win, I think does kind of help round out the resume for him when you are looking at kind of all-time great status in the heavyweight division. So again, I don't think a loss really damages him. A win, and it does kind of get him back into the conversation to not necessarily be at the adults table, but to be kind of waiting in line for that, I suppose. In terms of the here and now, it is a bit more of a desperate situation for Fury. I think he desperately needs a win. A loss here, and he is out of the real heavyweight championship picture. He would have to have Usyk lose to get back into it. And at 36, I don't think he has the time to be waiting around here. And so at this point for me, if he were to lose this bout, I think you just do a fight with Anthony Joshua, just again to kind of round out the era. Even though it is entirely like a decade too late, it is still a fight I think that you kind of roll with and to just kind of, get another big payday and roll on with that and just kind of put a bow on this era of heavyweight boxing. A win gets him most of his gold back, and it likely sets up a trilogy fight that, again, is a monster payday and one of the biggest fights that you could make in a really, really long time. And I think, again, there, if you can win a rivalry against a guy who beat you and was a pound-for-pound great at the time, that, again, starts to bolster that all-time legacy that you start to look at with Tyson Fury in this newer era of heavyweight boxing. So, in the here and now, there is so much on the line for Tyson Fury. A win, and you are back to being the heavyweight champion. You are back to being in those pound-for-pound rankings and all of that. A loss, and it kind of feels like it's done. Not in terms of being a moneymaker, because I think he can do that for as long as he wants to, but in terms of being relevant in the heavyweight title picture, I just feel like it would be a step too far for him to lose this fight and to stay in that title hunt. So, how does he do it? If Usyk is going to start slow again, Fury has to take advantage of this. The one thing he didn't do in the last fight that I think is going to be a real significant step in this one is work the body. I think that in the last fight, he didn't really take advantage of when things were going his way. If you can work the body and kind of wear down Usyk a little bit more, then you start to counterbalance that cardio edge that Usyk is going to probably have in the latter stages of this fight. It is one thing to just not be carrying around that much weight and be able to kind of hang with Tyson Fury and then be able to take advantage. But if you have these big shots that are just knocking the wind out of you, that can start to bring the video game stamina meter down just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that is where Fury, I think, can be able to hang in the later rounds a little bit more. And they talked after the last fight, they talked about how, no, look, we were happy with the game plan. I thought we worked the body perfectly. We threw a lot of body shots. And that's just, it's not true. And so it's weird that they went out and said that they used the proper game plan when they actually didn't implement it at all. So that tells me that they are aware that that game plan needs to be used a little bit more. The one thing we talked about yesterday on the Usyk side is that Usyk is going to be a little bit more familiar now with that reach advantage that Tyson Fury has and be able to figure out how to get inside maybe a little bit quicker this time. So there needs to be an adjustment on Tyson Fury's end, and I do think making Usyk pay when he comes inside by ripping to the body is going to be a very good way to start this one. There was a lot going on in Fury's life at the time of the last fight, and I'm not making excuses. I've said before, I think Usyk is the guy in this division. I think he's the most talented heavyweight that we have right now when it comes to boxing skill, with Fury being a very close second. So if Fury was taking Usyk lightly in the first fight, he needs to show that he learned his lesson and be able to put it on Usyk in this bout. And any discussion going into anything about Tyson Fury is always going to have a complicated layer to it. Like this fight, I've said, and we're doing a bunch of preview stuff on it, I am so excited for this fight coming up this weekend. I think from a pure analyzing the boxing fight, this is one of the more exciting fights you can make right now in the sport. And I am so excited to watch these guys step into the ring on Saturday afternoon. And when you just look at the boxing element of it with Tyson Fury, it is one of the stories that make people fall in love with this sport, where you have a guy who upsets this dominant champion, ushers in a new era, and at the exact same time starts battling crippling depression, balloons up to 400 pounds, and basically feels like he's going to die any day. He is able to get that back on track, come back into a reinvigorated heavyweight division, continue to dominate, and pick up big win after big win against marquee fighter after marquee fighter, while also dealing with a lot of personal tragedy as that goes along. It is truly an inspiring story. On the other hand, he has said some absolutely deplorable things about the LGBTQIA2S plus communities, and just feels like has a lot of problematic views on a lot of things that alienate a lot of people. And so that is always something that kind of hangs over it. And then you add that to the already difficult situation to stomach with Saudi Arabia having such a major role in this fight as they do in so many of them, and the awful human rights violations that are going on in that part of the world as well. And it just makes for a real difficult weekend for boxing fans to stomach. And it makes it difficult to just enjoy the fights this weekend. Just felt like that needed to be said. I felt like I was almost glossing over it a bit too much given everything going on. So felt we need to put that out there. All that being said, again, from a boxing standpoint, still going to be analyzing this fight, still going to be breaking it down. Full fight preview coming up this weekend. And again, for those watching live a little bit later on in the stream, for those watching delayed, whether it be on YouTube, Daily Motion, or listening in podcast form, we are going to be putting the look at the boxing schedule coming up tomorrow. So again, for those watching live, that's going to be happening a little bit later on here in the stream. It is the world of boxing getting the limelight this weekend as Oleksandr Usyk and Tyson Fury go head-to-head for a second time for the Heavyweight Championship of the world. And with the spotlight on the sport, thought now would be a good time to take advantage of that and show everyone what is coming up in the boxing world that we can get excited about here in the first part of 2020. So let's begin. January 24th. He is the pound-for-pound king right now, and he is fighting again out in Tokyo, Japan. It is Naoya Inoue taking on Sam Goodman. 12 rounds for Inoue's undisputed junior featherweight championship. I have said before, what this guy does in the ring is beautiful, destructive art that just comes in the way of violence. The punching power that he has is spectacular. And I think if you were to stack up everyone's skill set and put them at the same height, Inoue could knock out a building. He is that good. He has that kind of speed, that kind of precision, that kind of power. And so we get another opportunity to see the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world step into the ring in the early part of 2025. Then, a week later, in Las Vegas, Nevada, the PBC on Prime Video, it will be David Benavidez taking on David Morrell. 12 rounds for Benavidez's interim light heavyweight championship and Morrell's WBA lightweight title. Light heavyweight title. That would be quite the discrepancy. Light heavyweight against the lightweight. That would be a lot. But Benavidez, this feels like, I don't want to say a stay busy fight because Morrell is a good fighter. It is, if you're not going to get the Canelo fight, this is almost as good as you can do right now for Benavidez. And for him, just keep collecting belts and keep doing that at a weight class that Canelo seems to have his eye on. And maybe that is a way you can kind of goad Canelo into a fight, is he wants to be a guy at light heavyweight, and he wants to kind of slay that dragon after it didn't go well for him the first time. And so maybe Benavidez picking up a real recognized WBA light heavyweight championship, maybe that drags Canelo into a fight potentially. Might be a bit of a tight turn to do that on Cinco de Mayo, but maybe gets him for Mexican independence off in September. Later that month, in February, we get one of the more stacked cards in the history of the sport. Again, with all the complications that come with Riyadh season, but on DAZN pay-per-view, it will be for the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world. It'll be Artur Beterbiev taking on Dmitry Bivol. 12 rounds. Beterbiev with the convincing-ish when these two fought the first time. And I said before, like, this has a chance to be an epic rivalry. Two of the best fighters in the sport going head to head. They're going to do it again in the early part of 2025. But that is just the start of it. This card also has Carlos Adames against Hamza Shiraz for the WBC middleweight championship. Virgil Ortiz is fighting Israel Madrimov. You have Callum Smith on this one against Joshua Buatsi. Apologies there. For a interim light heavyweight championship. And Shakur Stevenson, who has certainly fallen out of favor with people, but I still think is one of the more talented fighters in the sport. If he has a big performance in him on this kind of a stage, that could propel him into a very big 2025. He will be fighting and looking to defend his WBC lightweight championship. And then Zhilei Zhang is also fighting for a vacant interim heavyweight championship. So just an unbelievably stacked card on DAZN pay-per-view at the back part of February. And then a week later, it is Las Vegas, Nevada again. PBC pay-per-view on Prime Video with Gervonta Tank Davis taking on Lamont Roach Jr. 12 rounds for Davis's WBA lightweight title. So in the first part of this year, let's just go from right now. I'm recording this on Tuesday, December 17th at 1:41 p.m. Mountain Time. Between now and March 2nd, we have pound for pound number one fighter in the world right now, Naoya Inoue, fighting for a championship. We have a top 5 fighter in Beterbiev fighting for a championship. We have a top 5 fighter in Tank Davis fighting for a championship. We have guys in the top 10 in David Benavidez and Dimitri Bivol fighting for championships. This is an unbelievable start to the year in the sport of boxing, and the pound for pound rankings will certainly be all shook up after the first quarter of 2025. All right. One of the big fights of the year closes out the calendar year for 2024 as it is Usyk against Fury 2, rematch of their fantastic heavyweight championship bout in the early part of this year. We have been previewing this fight card all week, looking at what it means for Usyk, what it means for Fury. Now we're going to break the fight down. Before we get into the preview for what is to come, I do think we have to look back at where we came from. Swig of water for the working man. Yeah, that's right. Novelty cup. Anyway, I went back and rewatched the first fight just to really get a sense of things. So just a quick recap of that. Usyk had way more early success than I remember. I had kind of had it in my mind that close-ish early, Fury pulls away in the middle, and then Usyk closes and just absolutely takes over at the end. But Usyk's pressure early was really fantastic. He had Fury cornered a few times, and honestly, I don't think he did really enough with that, but otherwise, just brilliance early on. The pressure, he was landing with great impact as well. It wasn't just some volume stuff. He was throwing hard and connecting on Tyson Fury, and that pressure was really having an effect. And the thing that you love about Usyk when you're watching him, there is absolutely no wasted motion. Every movement that he makes is with the sole purpose of finding a way to separate you from your consciousness. He is just an absolute tactician when it comes to the sweet science. I have thoroughly enjoyed what he has, what he can do from a skill standpoint. And then he really starts having some success, starting to put some combinations together. Lands a strong 3-punch combo in the second round. It was another close round in the third. I gave it to him. The DAZN broadcast with Maddox ended up giving it to Fury. And then Fury starts to really take over. He has some success in the fourth, and that's where things start to really grow on his side. And the big punch for him was the uppercut. He was landing it well as Usyk was coming in, and he really starts to dominate. Usyk's forward pressure still was really good, but he didn't have an answer for when Fury started to come forward a little bit, and he was starting to land basically every time that Usyk was closing the distance, to the point where Usyk would get inside and then cover up. because he has been almost trained for a couple of rounds to know that a bomb is coming at him every time he gets in, so it's instinctually covering up, and that just threw his rhythm and threw his timing off. And Fury did an amazing job of disrupting things in those middle rounds. As Usyk is coming in, it was that swinging, almost like Fight Night style uppercut that he would land that was really finding a home as Usyk was coming in. And then in the 8th round, Usyk gets it back. And I just mentioned Fight Night. It happens to me a lot because I'm not great at it. There are times where you'll go for a big punch in Fight Night and your guy will swing and he'll just kind of hang out there for a second before you can bring that back. That's kind of what Fury did. He landed a big shot and it took him half a beat to bring it back up here. And it was in that moment that Usyk lands just a devastating, cracking left that really, I think, changed the fight. And it was perfection. And it was the exact momentum changer that Usyk needed. And I have said that Usyk needs to be perfect in 12 rounds in this fight because of the power advantage that Tyson Fury has, just being the naturally bigger guy. This fight showed that you have to be perfect against Usyk as well, because any opening at all, this guy is so technically proficient that he will find that opening, he will take advantage, and it's gonna hurt. And he did that in just a beautiful way. And from there, everything changed. Fury started to slow down. Usyk was able to get inside more, and he was the one, again, dictating that pace. And he started having some success with the way that I just, again, it warms my heart, because this is what I think is the best way to fight if you are the smaller fighter, is basically volume your way in. And he threw a double jab and then came over the top with a right that landed very effectively. The first 2 jabs came up short, but it forces Fury every time to just back up and back up. And so he's not circling away, he's not whatever. He is just moving kind of in a straight line, and it's allowing Usyk, every time he's throwing a punch, he's getting closer, and then he's getting closer, and now he's in range for that right, and it lands perfectly. So it is, I think, the best way to handle things as a smaller fighter. I've never boxed, so I could be wrong on that, but having watched this sport a lot, it seems like that is the way that allows guys to get inside quite a bit. And he did a great job of getting there. And then in the 9th, the big shot wobbles Fury. Eventually he gets credit for the knockdown. And I do think in a lot of other situations that would be a stoppage. I think that less so now watching it a second time than I did in the moment, because you're on edge the whole time, and it's okay, what's gonna happen? Oh, he's got him. Oh, he's got, that's it. You know, like, you get really excited about it. You watch it back and it's like, yeah, he is all over the place, stumbling. And I think just calling it a knockdown was fine. Yeah, and honestly, like, he took quite a bit of damage there, and that may have been a little bit detrimental to him as that went on, because he took a pretty sustained beating that you don't get a lot of times in boxing necessarily. But again, from there, Usyk is really starting to land flush, and Fury has just, like, it is not a, like, 2010's UFC heavyweight fight, or even a fucking 2FC10's boxing heavyweight fight. Like, it's not like just zombie mode where it's but Fury is just half a step slower, and he was already probably a beat or two slower than Usyk anyway, and so that just little drop looked so significant because of how quick and efficient Usyk still was in the 10th and 11th round. You do get a strong bounce back in the 12th round from Tyson Fury, but it's not enough as Usyk gets the victory. On my scorecard initially, I had it 111 or 117, 111. This time around, on my super official scorecard that we have here, I did end up giving it still to Usyk, but 115, 112. Someone in the YouTube comments, I went back and watched the video. Someone in the comments was just furious at me. 117, 111. How could you? It's like, I don't know. He still lost. And I'm not getting paid for it. So, but yeah, so you can see I have Usyk winning the first 3 rounds, and then Fury in that middle round, 4, 5, 6, 7. It feels like he's starting to take over. He now has the lead in this fight, and things are going this way. And then he gets cracked in the He gets cracked in the 9th, and then he gets gets cracked in the 8th, gets dropped in the 9th, and then 10th and 11th, Usyk is building that momentum. You do get Fury coming out with a 10-9 round in the 12th, but that big 10-8 in the middle there is enough. And like on the 3 judges scorecards, only one of them had it 115, 112. The other 2 had it 114, 113. So that knockdown is the difference in this fight. So that, again, probably a bit closer than I thought it was after the first watch, and now going back and watching it a second time, it was just a nice reminder of seeing how everything goes. So now it is time to break down the second fight. Tyson Fury comes into this gigantic main event in Saudi Arabia at 36 years old, out of Manchester, England, 34-1-1 with 24 wins coming by way of knockout. He comes into this fight in what is a rare spot for him, the challenger, as he suffered a split decision loss to Oleksandr Usyk back in May of this year, 2024, again in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. His first career loss for the former unified heavyweight champion. He had won 7 in a row since a draw to Deontay Wilder back in Los Angeles in 2018. He has been on and off, obviously, throughout his career. We talked earlier in the week about everything that this man has gone through, and we talked about all the negative stuff too. But when you're looking at the sport, he beats Klitschko in 2015, doesn't fight again until 2018, goes through a severe depression, and is working his way back and gets back to the top of the mountain. But we haven't seen him fight often. This is just the second time that he is fighting twice in a year since 2020. He's been a pro since 2008. Usyk is the reigning and defending heavyweight champion for most promotions. He is 37 years old, born in Ukraine, 22 fights, 22 wins, 14 of them by knockout. His last fight, as we discussed, a split decision win over Tyson Fury back in May in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He has 5 decision wins in his last 6, the only knockout win coming against Dubois, which is seeming more and more impressive as the days go along. He is the WBC, WBA, WBO, IBO, and Ring Magazine heavyweight champion of the world. He was stripped of his IBF heavyweight championship for no good goddamn reason, so this fight is not for the undisputed heavyweight championship, it's just for most of them. He is a former unified cruiserweight champion as well. The 2012 Olympic gold medalist has been a pro since 2013. The first fight gave us incredible drama, and it gave us a few answers, but even more questions. So let's look at how this fight could go down. What does Tyson Fury need to do to win this fight? The jab was working for him early in that bout, but he didn't really follow it up with anything until the middle rounds. And I think that did allow Usyk to kind of get inside. Like, yes, that jab, it hurts. I would not want to get jabbed by Tyson Fury. But that jab, it got in the way, and it's an effective jab. Like, he's not just filling space with it. But when you know nothing's coming behind it, and you're as tough as Usyk is, it's like, yeah, I can take a punch. I can take a jab to get inside. And that allowed him to get some success. When he started to really put the combinations together is when you really started to see him have some success and start to be able to build on things a little bit. And that is where he was able to get that forward momentum in the middle rounds. Defensively, his head movement is very good. From a footwork standpoint, like for heavyweights, he's insane. But he did end up getting cornered a few too many times, especially early on in the fight, and I think that has to change here. I don't know if Usyk was necessarily anticipating that, quite frankly, because he would just get him there and then nothing would really happen. And Fury would do a lot of the ducking and diving in the Muhammad Ali stuff. And I don't think that threw Usyk off by any stretch of the imagination, but Usyk wasn't in there just throwing bombs and getting into a real phone booth fight or anything like that. But I do think that if Fury gets into the corners again here at the same rate that he did against Usyk in the first fight, that it's probably not going to go well for him. Just another note, people have been talking about that first fight, and yeah, he's doing the goofy and he's laughing and he's doing all the head movement and he's putting his hands behind his back and oh, you know what? He's taking Usyk he's not taking Usyk seriously enough. And that might be true. And that's probably what they told themselves at certain times throughout this training camp and watching the footage back of the fight back in May. But I also think Tyson Fury has a personality where he kind of has to do that kind of stuff. I don't think it is him not taking Usyk seriously. Honestly, I think it is kind of a very, very strange way of showing it, but it is actually a sign of respect to Usyk. Like, I can't just be super serious guy in here. That is not me. That is not how I do things. And if I do that, I'm going to be actually off my game, and that's going to cost me. He needs to be himself in there. And so if that means some of the personality stuff, then that means some of the personality stuff, I think, has to shine through. Where he really started to have success was when he started to disrupt the rhythm of Oleksandr Usyk and landing those big power shots when he was coming in. That was the answer to Usyk's forward pressure. It was the fantastic jab and then the counters that were working well as Usyk was coming in. And it was the big uppercuts that were landing as well. And he would work the body a little bit as well. But I've said as well way too many times now. But it was those big uppercuts as Usyk is coming in that were the real impactful punches in those middle rounds. Again, when Fury was having that success. We look here on the scoreboard, the scorecard that I had for the first fight. I'm circling with my mouse. You can't see that, but in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, the third is when he started to follow up with the combos, and that just put a slight hitch in the giddy up of Usyk and slowed that roll enough that by the time the 4th round is here, then all of a sudden Usyk's coming in, but it is not with the same aggression, it is not with the same force, and it is allowing those swinging uppercuts and those not looping rights, but those quick rights that are coming from nowhere. That allows that to really start to take a hold, and that's why you see for those watching, sorry, podcast listeners, but that's why you see the orange in the middle rounds there, because he continued to have that success with those uppercuts. One thing that concerns me about this fight from the Fury side of things is all the stuff we are hearing about him losing a bunch of weight for this fight. And now I'm taping this on Thursday at 3:22 p.m. Mountain Time. So for those watching the preview later on YouTube, I have not seen the weigh-in yet. So maybe he's coming in at 295 pounds and this whole little blurb is whatever. But I promise there's more good stuff after. I worry about, though, the talk that we are hearing that he has been losing a bunch of weight for this fight. You're not going to out-cardio, out-speed, or out-quickness Usyk. That is not going to happen. He did not lose this fight because you wore out. You lost because he was able to get inside and land those power shots. And that's why the stamina bar, video game style-wise, starts to come down a little bit. It's not because you personally lost anything there. It is because he found his way to your chin, and that's why things started to go down. And so I think it is maybe learning the wrong lesson from what we saw. And it is also, I think, not really playing to your strengths in this. If you wanted to take a year or whatever and really try to get down and just be a bigger version of an Usyk, I think Tyson Fury could. Like, he is already almost there now, quite frankly. Like, what Usyk is speed, cardio, and quickness-wise to Fury is what Fury is speed, cardio, and quickness-wise to everyone else basically he's ever fought. He's just also bigger than them, which is why he is such a rare talent with what he is able to do. And so, like, yes, it is, in theory, you think, okay, well, this guy has the cardio edge and the speed edge. Let me get a little bit smaller, trim down, and now that edge goes away. But that takes away the biggest edge that you have is the power and the size that you can kind of wear on this guy with and be able to put him away that way. And so I worry that by doing this, Fury is just kind of become a lesser version of Usyk and not a stronger version of himself. I would love to see, instead, if we want to balance off that cardio standpoint and where Fury's camp, I think more shots to the body need to happen. Again, especially when he is taking over in those middle rounds. It's not that anything was going wrong. He was cruising at that point. But if there is a bit of a gap, it lessens every time the 260-pound guy punches the 220-pound guy in the stomach. That's how humans work. So I feel like there could be more done strategically to wear down Usyk this time around. I also wonder if we do see a little bit more grabbing from Fury. That would mean that Usyk is getting inside, which would not be good, as we've talked about before. But I do wonder if there's just a little bit more trying to make, especially early on, trying to make Usyk carry his weight a little bit, try to wear on him a little bit, and try to, again, bring it down to your level that way. But again, from a purely in the ring standpoint, I want to be very clear about that. From a purely in the ring standpoint, I have such a respect for the skills of Tyson Fury, the cardio that he can have at his size, the speed that he has at his size. He is a very intelligent fighter, I think, as well. Like, he is, from an in-ring boxing standpoint, about as close to a perfect package that we have had at heavyweight in a really, really long time. He is just happening to fight someone who is a very good version of that as well. I now looking at what Usyk needs to do to win this fight. I will always love throwing out the decoys to get inside for the small fighter, and he did that very well as a good adjustment as that fight went on. I would assume we see that maybe a little bit earlier. I would also assume that Tyson Fury has somewhat of a counter for that. That was the fun part about the last fight, is it starts out with Usyk, that forward pressure, getting him the points early on. Again, I'll pull up the scorecard for those watching. First 3 rounds, Usyk, he is getting that forward pressure. He is putting that on, and he is getting the opportunities, and he is taking advantage of them. Middle rounds, Fury has adjusted. How has he done it? He has landed as Usyk is coming in. He has landed with great impact, and that is slowing things up and making Usyk maybe a little bit more hesitant and allowing Fury to get on the front foot and really start to pressure and fight the fight that he wants. In the 8th round, Fury is sloppy for a second. Usyk takes advantage, lands the power shot. And at this point, Fury, because we have now fought for 24 minutes, which is a lot when you're huge, or just anyone, like 145-pound guys wear down at that point. Because we have been in this intense battle for this long, we have started to wear down a little bit, and that speed edge is really showing up for Usyk, and he is able to take over. And so this was such a fun fight to watch because of adjustment and then adjustment. And that is just, there's a lot of great things about boxing. But it's one of my favorite things about the sport is you can have, because there are 12 rounds and it's a 36-round fight, you have time to download the information and adjust. And so you have to counter, and you have to have a counter for the counter. And there's a story that can be told throughout that fight. And so I am very curious to see who has the adjustments for the adjustments in this particular bout that is going to give them the victory. And so you would assume that Fury is going to be ready for that second adjustment that Usyk was able to make in being able to kind of decoy his way into the inside and be where he wants to be. He has to be the aggressor in this fight. As with everyone, Fury doesn't throw quite as well when he is backing up, and so that forward pressure is key. Fury was still landing when Usyk was coming forward, but it just wasn't with the same impact as when Fury was really starting to come forward. It seems very, very simple, but the fighter that was coming forward basically won every round of that fight. And so you have to be the aggressor if you are Oleksandr Usyk in this bout. When it was going well, it was perfect last time. Like 10 out of 10, no notes. It was incredible, the speed, accuracy, and precision that Usyk was fighting with that gave him the wins that kind of bookend the fight at the beginning and the end of this one. When it is going well, I don't know if there is a human being on earth and some cars that can stop Oleksandr Usyk. I do think that maybe he needs to do a little bit more with the advantage when Fury is in the corner. I think that will really help him in this fight. When Fury gets cornered up, just go back to the body and get that going. That was another thing. I forgot to mention that in the breakdown of the first one, but another part of how Usyk was able to get his kind of flow back and his momentum going was he was able to get a couple body shots, and that allowed the rhythm to get back, and that allowed him to get back into his groove and bop, and then go back to the head and do all of that. And it made for, I think, a very interesting fight and a lot of effectiveness that kind of got him going forward a little bit more and a little bit more each time. So I think that there is a lot that Usyk can take from that last fight. But again, just the one tweak that I would like is a few more body shots and take full advantage when Tyson Fury is in the corner. Yes, his movement is very good, but the head movement's great. That body does kind of stay there, though. There's only so much you can do with that, and so that's where I think Usyk can take advantage of that. Again, I think he is the most talented fighter in the world, and so me giving any pointers to him is laughable, but just from an observation standpoint, this is what I'm looking for in this fight. It is such an interesting bout, because even after 12 rounds, you still have unanswered questions. Fury's speed, chin, and cardio make him a unicorn in the heavyweight division, but he is facing the one guy at heavyweight who can pass him in all of those areas and still has the power to make him pay. Again, Usyk is doing to Fury what Fury basically did to Klitschko and did to the rest of the heavyweight division for years. He is now just doing it in a smaller package than we are used to, but it is still so technical and so fun to watch. The first fight was a brilliant display of in-fight adjustments from both fighters, creating a classic, and also creating a lot of doubt as to what could happen in rounds 13 to 24 this time around. I cannot wait for these two guys to step into the ring on Saturday afternoon out in Saudi Arabia. My official prediction is Oleksandr Usyk to win by decision. From a gambling standpoint, if we want to look at it that way, Usyk to win is minus 125. That will certainly be getting a click from ya boy. Also, we have Usyk by decision is plus 185. That is going to be the biggest part of what we are looking at. The biggest, exposure I will have this weekend is Usyk by decision at plus 185. Also, I do think, while I've kind of mentioned the general shittiness of boxing, with the IBF stripping Usyk for no reason at all for the heavyweight title, this is not a sport that is immune to shenanigans. And so I have shenanigans insurance, because you look at, like, what is next after this? And we'll get into fights to make after this next week. Oh, it wouldn't let you raid. That's very weird. I don't know why. Don't know why I wouldn't. Either way, shout out Deeds. Thank you very much. Appreciate the attempt anyway. But yes, looking at this fight and looking at what could come next, and we're going to look a lot at what is next week, even with a lot of the year in review things that are going to be going on. I think when you look at what could be next, the obvious thing is if Fury wins, there's a rematch and there's a trilogy, and it's one of the biggest fights ever. If Usyk wins, Fury's kind of done. Joshua, the next biggest name, he's done, basically, right? Like, he's lost. Dubois is the next big name. Usyk's already beat him, and it's not really that big of a name, is it? Like, it is, from a box office standpoint, significantly more beneficial for Tyson Fury to win this fight. And boxing sometimes just seems to have that stuff work out. You know? So I have, like I have said, shenanigans insurance by looking at this fight as a draw, which I believe right now is plus 1,400 out there. I am not going to go as far as to putting it down on Fury, because then, like, we're spread all over, and at that point it's not worth it. But again, just a little bit of the shenanigans insurance that this fight goes to a draw at 14-1 right now.